Welcome back, episode 3, RS660 build series. We got a lot done yesterday. I didn't film because, we had a lot to do and just not super comfortable filming with my buddy here working. So I'll go over kind of what we did yesterday. Just long story short of it all, rear sets, rear shock, exhaust, and then emissions delete stuff, and also pulled the front forks to ready for the cartridges and top clamps, clip-ons, that kind of thing. So starting at the back again, what we did is we ended up putting a jack under the OEM exhaust catalytic converter here, jacked that up, took some weight off the rear end, and then we pushed out the stock swing arm pivot bolt. Well, bolt, I guess it is. And that actually was pretty easy. We left the shock in to kind of help hold the weight of the swing arm, because if you pulled the shock and then pulled that, the whole swing arm would come off the bike. So that was first thing. Left the shock in, pushed this out, installed the Spider rear sets. We've got them on both sides here. Pretty straightforward. That didn't really have any issues there. It's actually got, Spider's got provisions for the rear brake switch, so the rear brake light would work on these on the street bike. And I did have that hooked up because, again, I'm going to put some street miles on this bike. Master cylinder mounts right up. I've got the ABS delete lines from Robum Engineering. And again, all this stuff I'll link in the description below here for you. So ABS delete lines, we did pull the ABS lines from underneath. Here, it's actually, you can find those under the ECU. I don't know if you can see them, but they're down in there. There's 4 little bolts here. Those take some plugs, which I believe you can find, I'll link them. I believe you can find them on a number of different websites. I think all the major parts suppliers for this bike will carry plugs. Even, I just looked because I'm ordering some new banjos from Spiegler Performance, and Spiegler Performance carries them. So I'll link some of those things. But so now we've got a solid brake line from the master down to the caliper, which is now underslung with the Robum underslung mount. The trick with this, and I had to talk to the guys at Robum, the line that they give you is not going to reach, because when you undersling the caliper, it flips it, and the banjo is back here, and the bleeder's up here. So he told me pull out the banjo and the bleeder and swap them, and now you've got the banjo up front, and the line will reach. And then it does have provisions for the wheel speed sensor here. And again, we just used the clips that came with the bike and clipped those all together like they were stock. It just goes up top here over the swing arm and then dumps behind back here. You can kind of see where it routes. We were unsure about how it routed, but you just got to kind of be careful putting the wheel back in when you take it off. This actually can be a captive spacer, so to speak. You drill in from here, mount it there, and then the whole system is captive when you pull the rear wheel. Continuing on with the back stuff, we mounted the Spider shark fin here. A little nerve-wracking drilling the swing arm, but there's plenty of material here. Just make sure you get a good tap or a good starting point there, center it. And then we've got the Robum Engineering Superbike lifters here. Again, it uses the stock spool mount location, and then you do have to drill a hole on either side to mount those. So it mounts in 2 spots here, and then it's the Superbike lifter here. These aren't the correct Pitbull stand things. Those are on order, but these work just fine for now. So again, pull the swing arm bolt here, rear set slide on. I already had pre-built those. We flipped the lever here, so now it's in GP shift with the AF1 ECU. From what I understand is you do a couple shifts with the clutch, and then the ECU recognizes you're in GP shift, and it'll automatically adjust for that. So you don't have to recode it from the dealer, you just have the ECU. This stuff's all still loose because we have to do some adjustments here. So quick torque specs for you guys. Rear axle nut's 26 millimeters, and that's going to be 120 Newton meters. This swing arm pivot's a 24 millimeter bolt. That's 100 Newton meters. The rear shock bolts are 50 each. This was tricky, so it took some figuring with the Öhlins rear. I've got the rear with the remote reservoir. I don't have the remote preload adjuster one. I didn't feel like that was super necessary. I'm not going to be adjusting preload constantly. So I didn't spring the extra, I think, 300 bucks for that. So the trick here, we installed the shock first. You can access it pretty easy. It's pretty easy to get to on either end. And we installed the shock, and then we tried to install the reservoir here, but there's not any room. So the reservoir actually you mount it so it pulls the bracket, you mount it so it pulls the reservoir out a little bit, because if you flip that, the reservoir's in too far and it hits the plastic under the subframe. So I don't know if I can show you, but you can't really get to the bolts. They're back up under here with the shock in place. So we had to pull the shock back out, tighten the bolts off the reservoir mount, and then reinstall the shock. So that was kind of tricky there. We had to make sure we did that correct. So again, pulled the ABS lines. Those are routed out of the bike. The rear one's installed. The front ones are obviously not. So this will give you a better look at the Spider steering stops. Those will keep the steering from going too far in one direction or another, and hopefully allow me to use my clip-ons with the stock bodywork, because if not, that's gonna be a little bit of a tricky issue to put some street miles on the bike. Back up front, we've got the Jet Prime emission stuff. So we pulled the secondary air injection here, and also the charcoal canister sat up here. So the air box was sitting here. We had to pull that. The Jet Prime stuff came with some plugs. Where are they at? To plug up the stock stuff. So there's one here. There's another one. And then you pull that, pulls all the, pulls the vacuum lines, pulls all that stuff. This piece right here was a pain to get to. And Jet Prime's instructions, you know, it's very rudimentary. They point to a couple things, pull some things, and everything goes back in. I don't know how you can get to that without pulling the radiator. It's just, there's no space. The radiator's here. It's almost impossible to get a wrench in there. And it had some Allen bolt heads, pieces. Let's see if I can find some, you know, kind of similar to this in there. I initially tried to get it. I pulled the first one out, the second two stripped, and that was just it. I mean, there was no way. So we had to pull the radiator off and then actually use some new bolts with 8mm and also Torx in there. So we have a double way to get those off. So plug that up. That was, once we got that radiator off, that's pretty straightforward. Of course, all the lines, you've got the water pumps, you've got the thermostat housing, Samco hoses en route for that stuff, so I'm not putting any of that back just yet. Exhaust. Once you get the radiator off, exhaust is pretty straightforward. That was super easy. This SC project is a beautiful piece of work. Full titanium here. We plugged the O2 sensors with some appropriate sized bungs, and then the O2s will not plug back in. I don't think you need those with the race ECU, but that's pretty straightforward. The stock exhaust again came off in one piece. You know, it's in here. I'm saving it just now for the O2s, but don't think we need it. But it's all one piece. Pretty straightforward there. There's 4 copper nuts, 2 for each side there, and then it was kind of tricky to get to with the rear sets on. You just have to use a little bit of a angle adapter for your socket to get in there. But yeah, this full titanium exhaust frees up a lot of room and looks beautiful, and it fit perfect. I mean, there was little to no adjustment needed. Honestly, I think we could have just bolted everything up tight from the start. You know, normally you bolt things loose, kind of get them in place, and then tighten them down once you get everything installed. This thing, it lined up perfect. So kudos to SC Project on that, because their measurements are spot on. Back to the front end. So pulled the front master because the brake lines came off, and we had to pull that anyway for the clip-ons in top triple. But pulled the forks out, sent those back with my buddy to Moto Station, the local shop here. They're gonna put in the cartridges for us, and then we can throw those forks back in. I think I'll go ahead and pull this stuff next, because I don't need the forks for that necessarily. This is gonna be a 26, same as the rear axle. Pretty easy there. So we're gonna pull that nut. Everything should just slide off the top there, slide off the triples. Got some new grips to put on. So hoses, radiator, forks back in. This is, we're back to basically to the point of reassembly at this point. I've got the Sato racing hooks on both sides now. I put this guy in, I think this stock mount is heavy duty. So I think that would have been fine for a strapping point, because what I'm gonna do is use my Baxley front wheel chock in the trailer and roll it in, wheel chock it, and then strap it forward off of the rear hooks here, as opposed to doing a handlebar strap. I don't have a pit bull rear restraint, because I usually just borrow a trailer, so I don't have anything permanent in the trailer to get things back and forth to the track. Yeah, so pretty straightforward. We had to do some back and forth. The rear wheel had to come off a couple times just to get things lined up on the back end, the underslung mounts. But everything's fitting up just nice. I mean, the rear sets are gorgeous. Billet pieces there. The Robum stuff matches the Spider stuff to a T, and it's fractions of the price, but it's beautiful black billet. Sato Racing, beautiful black billet. We got the Spider stuff on the top end there. So now we're just basically hoping everything goes back as it should, because I got a lot of parts sitting around, a lot of bolts, but we're in the home stretch, I think. I mean, next video, we'll have the top triples and clip-ons done. Once the radiator hoses come, which should be this week, the radiator will go back on. I've got some new banjos coming for the rear end just because I wanted some bling. So I've got some purple brake line banjos coming. So that's where we're at. I've got to go put the airbox back on. I don't want to lose track of that because we got a lot of stuff going on here. I want to make sure everything goes back on just fine. Regulator rectifier hanging back here. Fuel tank lines. So once I get the airbox back on, I can probably throw the fuel tank back on. I'm going to probably start it. I don't need a radiator necessarily. Just start it. So I'm going to probably go ahead and do that, give it a start. And yeah, I mean, we're in the home stretch. As long as everything goes back together just fine, the way it came off, I think it'll be fine. And it's looking good. Again, you know, Olin's rear, beautiful SC Project full titanium. I still need to wipe that down. We use gloves to put it on, but you never be too sure. So make sure you wipe that down with some brake cleaner or WD-40 or something, so you don't get any fingerprints in the titanium. Once you start it, it starts bluing and purpling up. You definitely don't want any fingerprints in that, because that'll ruin that beautiful blue purple experience there. So yeah, I think that's where I'm gonna leave you guys today. Next video, like I said, I should have the airbox back on, tank box or fuel tank back on, and I'll do a first start video with the SC Project. Get the top triples on, forks back in, front wheel back on, brake lines and master back on, and it's just a matter of body work and getting it out on the road. So yeah, coming along nice. Thanks for watching.